Howdy guys, it's Joe. Today talking about Wraxu and his Hanzo, which is something that I feel like a lot of people like to watch right now, a lot of people like to talk about, and overall, he's kind of pushing Hanzo more and more into the metagame. Now, of course, Hanzo did just barely get that pretty nice buff, and while it wasn't the hugest thing in the world, it did help him a little bit, but mainly we've been seeing this guy play Hanzo for like season upon season, but he really popped off, I'd say last season and this season mostly. He's been doing okay for a while, but that's when he finally reached that like top 50, top 10, at some points like top 7 rank that he's reached. And yeah, overall I'd say he's definitely the best person to learn Hanzo from right now, and a person that's a little bit weird when you're actually watching him. He plays very, very well though. Of course, he charges all of his shots, he hits a lot of stuff, and he goes for a ton of shots as well. He doesn't hit every single arrow. That's one thing I want to remind you guys of. If you're playing Hanzo and you're not hitting every arrow, that's okay. That does happen. You see, he just keeps shooting though, keeps going for more and more. And as well as Hanzo, one thing I want to remind you guys is that Hanzo can get a lot more kills at medium to closer ranges than at further ranges. While he is a sniper, and while he can snipe people, and he can get those really nice lucky shots at really far ranges, he gets a lot more accurate and a lot more consistent shots at medium ranges. And that's why I'm going to say he probably is the best place to play him with. Be next to some tanks, play pretty close to the medium range, and take people out that are trying to dive on you, and take people out that are in front of you. Overall, he can do a lot of damage like that. A nice thing that we saw with his ultimate right here is, of course, ulting where the opponents are probably going to walk backwards towards. Of course, his team was trying to engage right there. Unfortunately, the enemy team had a May wall, but he was essentially just putting down his ult to where he thought the enemies would be going, and that's essentially all you really have to do. Of course, you can try to save it and combo with stuff like Zarya, but if you aren't in a comp with someone like Zarya, or a comp with someone like Mei, or someone with a huge crowd control ult, just ult where you think that the opponents are going to be ulting. Now, another thing I want to talk about quickly is actually that his sensitivity is really high as well. Really great shot right there, and another great shot. And you can see he is very, very consistent on these closer range shots, but does get some nice far ones. But overall, again, back to his consistency and back to his sensitivity, you can see that it's very high. He can flick his wrist really fast, and I don't know, it's one of the only players that I've actually seen put a sensitivity up this high. I guess it's because as Hanzo you don't need quite as much pinpoint accuracy. You need more just really good tracking and, following where the enemies are going and stuff like that, which is a little bit different than someone like, let's say, McCree, who needs really, really, really nice pinpoint accuracy. But, can suffer a little bit from not being able to move your mouse quite as fast. So I guess that's up to you, but if you are playing Hanzo, you can turn it up a little bit more than what you would normally have. At least that's what I'm seeing from this player. And of course, he's doing really well with that, so, take that with a grain of salt, I guess. I feel like it's especially good at closer ranges, though. Very low sensitivity is great at further ranges, but at medium to closer ranges, higher sensitivity usually does help a decent amount, especially when you have the giant log that is Hanzo. But again, that's up to you. Another thing I want to say is that he is always shooting something, and he isn't really afraid of missing his shots. I feel like a lot of Hanzos just kind of hold their bow for a long time, or for longer than they really should be, or just aren't shooting at walls and just aren't shooting at stuff. Really, there's no reason to not spam shots. You don't have to reload, you don't really have to do anything, you can just keep going on, and there's not way too much trouble you have to worry about. But a lot of the times, people just aren't doing that. Right here we see a Genji, I think behind us still. Maybe we took him out, but I think he's still around here somewhere. And we're trying to, shoot the people in front of us, though. And I think, yeah, I guess the Genji got away or something like that. But Genji is getting a lot of kills right here. The Hanzo player, essentially, Wraxu, has to try to kill the Genji or try to play pretty safe. Against Genji, personally, I feel like getting up a little bit, like medium range again, a little bit closer, is very risky because, of course, he can kill you a lot faster. But as well, it allows you to get a lot more easy headshots and, of course, scatter arrows. So it's kind of up to you. Do you want to take the more risky route, or do you want to, however, take the more safe route, but the route that probably won't actually end up killing the Genji? Overall, I feel like you have a little bit of problems actually taking him out, but, it is definitely doable, especially if you practice him. Now, to something about Hanzo, other than, just simply how great this guy's playing and, aiming his shots, tracking his shots is a thing you should be doing. Track instead of flick, as Hanzo. Kind of track to where the enemies are walking to and shoot where you think that they're normally walking to. If people obviously always walk backwards when you're shooting at them, walk to where you think they're going to be walking to, not always to where they actually are right now. Yeah, you kind of do just have to predict, which is a little bit awkward. But back to what I was going to say. As Hanzo right now, he's in a pick where some people are finally allowing you to play him and aren't thinking that you're trolling. But there's still quite a few people that really think you're going to troll if you pick up this character. Personally, one of my friends right now is playing Hanzo, and he's doing really good as Hanzo and having a lot of fun with him too, but people still think that he's trolling. And you have a few options. First off, you can talk to your team and say, guys, I'm not trolling. Talk in voice chat, that's a lot better than typing. Typing a lot of times doesn't really work way too well with that, but say, I'm not trolling, I'm actually trying to get good as Hanzo, and I'm trying to play him and win the best I can, and that can help a little bit. As well with that, you do have to realize that the first few games you play Hanzo that you're trying to get good as him, of course, you won't be that amazing at the character. So just tell your team that you're still trying your best, even if you aren't really godlike. And you do have to remember, it takes a lot of games to become good enough to where it can warrant the pick. But if you're never playing him because you're too afraid to play him, you're never going to become good enough to warrant the pick. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but please do that. And if your entire team is raging at you, trolling at you, and you really just want to get good at the character, I'm going to say, do the unorthodox thing. And if you're getting really tilted by a certain player on your team, just mute that single player. Don't leave voice chat. That'll just make everybody angry at you. But if there's one person always being angry at you and just yelling and not really helping you at all, just mute that singular player. Keep trying your best and keep trying to win the best you can. Now, as well with Hanzo, as far as team comp goes, I feel like he's pretty decent right now because he does really well against dive comp in certain situations. If you're at pretty close range, you can often one-shot the Genji, one-shot the Tracer, or one-shot someone like a McCree or a Soldier or anyone else that does get a medium close range. You should really try to practice your range at that range, or your aim at that range, and at this far range, you can just kind of shoot at random times. You see, he's really not hitting way too many super far range shots because they are more luck than skill, while the closer range shots are, of course, a lot more skillful than luckful. But that's really just kind of as far as that goes. You can, of course, also pick Hanzo into a lot of different comps. He does work pretty well. And I'd say most situations, if you are getting a lot of picks with him, but you can also kind of focus more on getting general damage out. Right here, of course, we see this Genji jumping on us. A little bit hard to kill him, but we can still see that the Hanzo player can shoot other people on the Genji's team, even if he can't happen to pick the Genji, because the Genji, is jumping all over the place. Remember that you can't actually shoot tanks. Remember that you can't actually kill the tanks and deal a lot of damage to them, too. Of course, your E is one of the highest DPS things in the game, pretty much. If you can E Winston's feet and then headshot them, they're going to immediately die. And the same thing with most tanks. D.Va may take 2 headshots or something like that. But yeah, remember that you can do that. But again, as always, do target prioritize. Try to go after the supports. But I don't know. I feel like I see a lot of Hanzos just not exactly doing that. And just not really shooting all the time. I feel like people worry a little bit too much about their accuracy. While Wraxu has great accuracy, probably took him a lot of misses before he started to get a lot of hits. And as well, when you're just kind of fighting the opponents and when they're at very far ranges away from you, there's no reason to just not spam. Like, you might get a lucky headshot. Sure, you might just miss 50 shots in a row at far range, but you really aren't missing out on way too much because it's not like you're going to shoot anyone anyways. Just keep going for it. Yeah, we see this bow pretty much always charged up, so just kind of do realize that's just kind of how the character works, and that you gotta miss a lot of shots before you hit a lot of shots, and you kind of just have to learn really the curve. As well, we see right here that he is using, of course, the white color. A lot of people think that white's the best. I'd say white or green is probably the best color for your crosshair. And he's using the regular crosshair, again, with a pretty high sensitivity. One thing that I see a lot of people doing is going for, the dot crosshair or going for, I think, the short crosshair. And I feel like as Hanzo, going for this crosshair that he's using, the default one, is a little bit better as it kind of helps you a bit understand how to shoot at far ranges. And then at close ranges, you can just kind of, kind of see where they're going. And honestly, you don't really even have to use your crosshair after you get to a certain level of skill as much. When you're shooting at closer ranges, you just kind of think about what's going on. And this crosshair is a lot more dynamic. Overall, I feel like it's a pretty good one to use. You can use other ones, but I feel like personally this one is the one that's probably the most effective. Of course, we couldn't get the second point on Hanamura on this map. Very hard to get. I don't think we have a Zarya. If we did, we might have been able to do it. If you can possibly get someone like a Zarya, who I don't feel like is the best right now, but still really good with Hanzo, then that's a good idea. And as well, Hanzo, one problem about him, I guess, is that he can't really stall way too much on the second point. But other than that, he's fine. He's just a fine DPS. Right there, of course, Hanzo beating up a Widowmaker. If you do see a Widowmaker, don't try to shoot them at far range, I'd say. You can try to, peek a little bit behind your Reinhardt shield and try to shoot them. But if you're trying to 1v1 them just at far range without a shield for yourself, you should lose every single time if they're good. But what, of course, you can do is happen to try to get a little bit closer and get more into medium range, as we saw right here. Of course, charge up your bow before you go above the wall. Now, since you can do that with this new buff, I think this was before the buff, but I can't really tell. But you can do that now. Of course, charge up and then shoot the Widowmaker at far range. But again, I'd say try to go for a medium range and try to shoot him from there. And mainly try to hide behind your tanks, as we see right here. You can try to go for this, but since the Widow's right there, it's a little bit scary. As well with that, of course, you can use your Sonic Arrow. A pretty obvious thing to do. Just kind of see where the Widow's going. Not really anything way too advanced, but that can be a thing you want to go for. As Hanzo, though, I'm just going to really say, if you want to play the character, just play the character. I feel like he's really that character that most people are still really angry when they're seeing, and if you play him, you do have to expect quite a bit of hate. You do have to expect quite a bit of people talking to you and talking you down and saying, pick off Hanzo, you aren't doing anything, you aren't getting nearly enough picks. But if you keep practicing him, you can keep getting better at him and keep playing the character and keep enjoying him. Of course, everybody bought this game, everyone can do whatever they want, but Yeah, I don't really know. Before you pick him up in competitive, though, I would say please put like 20 to 30 to 40 hours on him, at least in quick play. I know it doesn't really emulate competitive way too much, but just to practice your ranges and just to practice more where you want to shoot at, it's a great idea. I don't want to be telling anybody, you know, just go pick up Hanzo out of nowhere. He's really not a pick that can be used like that way too well. And you do have to become very, very good at getting quick shots, tracking really well, and of course knowing the exact medium ranges to shoot people very accurately. Alright, there of course climbing up walls, trying to stay as safe as possible. Unfortunately gets picked off because he couldn't climb up that wall. And as well, you kind of do have to just play a lot of the character to know what you can climb up. Overall, it takes a lot of skill and it takes a lot of time to learn. But again, I'd say he is worth it. And if you are very good at projectile characters, he can be one that can carry you games. I would say still, though, maybe try to learn a second character or like a tank or something else to kind of help you with, as sometimes if you're versus, let's say, a Far Mercy and you just can't happen to pick those guys off, it can be a little bit difficult for you. Now, of course, versus Far Mercy, I'm going to tell you, you don't really want to focus on them way too much. It's going to be really hard, and until they get at like a medium range, with it, which they do sometimes, you really can't do way too much, or for the most part, you won't be able to do way too much unless you get a lucky headshot. But you still can't focus on the rest of their team. You can still damage the tanks, still burst straight through them, still kill all the other DPS, and still try to snipe all the supports. It's not all over for you, and I'd say if you are versus a Far Mercy, don't focus on them way too much, as they're essentially just going to make you into a useless character because you won't be doing anything. It's just going to be focusing on them way too much. And maybe ask one of your teammates if they can go hit scan. I know people probably get a bit salty that you're trying to ask someone else to do that, but if you can, that's of course a really good idea to try to go for. Again though, not every single game has one of those, and we just finished it off right here with a normal nice comp on his team. Zen gets shifted right there, and we just finish it off very safe. We see that we're always on high ground and always staying far back behind, and as well that we can hear really well as Wraxu. He probably has some really nice headphones on, and he can overall really hear where people are coming from and stay safe and kind of prepare himself. Of course, charge up shots before they walk around the corner. He saved up his ultimate a little bit right there, of course, trying to use your ultimate to really just get a lot of space with the character. Overall though, again, I feel like he's a good character. I feel like he can do quite a bit, but you do have to kind of use a few little tips in order to A, play well as him, and mainly B, make your team not troll when you pick the character. Kind of a thing that really only applies to like him, Torb, Sim, and a few other characters like that, maybe Junkrat. But if you can't happen to get good at him, and if you can't happen to play him well, of course you can actually climb, because we have like a 3 to 4 to 5 top 500 Hanzo, so it can work right now. Hanzo doesn't really work too great in tank metas, but in DPS metas, he can work. We're seeing this a lot right here. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, make sure to leave a like, comment down below what you want to see for next time, what character, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.